Welcome into the Beat Sessions, the place for all things music. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about the Rolling Stones and this new record, Hackney Diamonds. They released that on October 20th. This is the 24th British studio album and the 26th American studio album for the Rolling Stones, and their follow-up to 2016's Blue and Lonesome, a collection of blues covers. So if we want to talk about the last record of original material, have to go back 18 years to 2005's A Bigger Bang. Excellent to have the Rolling Stones back with a new record, and I'm not going to argue that this is one of the best records of 2023, but I might argue that it's one of the coolest records of 2023. And after 3 weeks or so now, talking to people, reading reviews, I think the only person that might not agree with me is a certain Grayson Haver-Curran, writer for Pitchfork, who gave this thing 4.5 out of 10 stars. And normally I wouldn't start an album review with negative publicity, but I got to post this thing because it's so funny. It's probably the angriest album review I've ever read in my entire life. This dude is just so indignant. Like, I think Mick Jagger must be his like estranged father or something. It's the imagery that he's painting in this review. He just talks about like 65-year-old white guys like banging on the stereo. I mean, it is just so funny. Joking aside, though, I think most people will agree that this is a record with phenomenal energy, and it's a record that most of us as Stones fans, I don't think expected to get. There really is no reason for us to have a new Stones record at this point. Decades of successful touring. I will call the Stones out for ticket prices. They are just absolutely absurd. And I definitely would not pay that price tag to go see a bunch of 80-year-old Rolling Stones. But, you know, decade and a half ago, those tickets were still worth the price. Charlie Watts was still there. That is definitely a massive loss for these guys. He definitely was the father figure amongst the this rambunctious crowd. So losing him, not just his influence, but his skill set, what he brought to the table as a musician for this band. It's a tough blow for these guys. But, you know, this guy Grayson, he talks about Mick Jagger and Keith Richards not acting their age. But when you're a Rolling Stone and your age is immortality, you know, what age do you act? This record is interesting to me. He talks about that level of maturity, the lyrics on some of these songs. That, you know, this is a band that the womanizing, they've definitely have brought up subject matter over the years in their songs that has been controversial. And so I listened to this record, the energy, being on producer Andrew Watt, I think it's a good call. You're getting a contemporary feel to this record. And I think that bringing him aboard for production is causing this record to have the same effect that albums like Some Girls or Emotional Rescue had in the late 70s and early 80s. And Tattoo You is, I mean, that record is so interesting because Tattoo You comes from, you know, a bunch of different sessions throughout the 70s. Records like Goat's Head Soup, It's Only Rock and Roll, Black and Blue, records that really aren't necessarily held in super high regard. But there's something about the charge of Some Girls and Emotional Rescue that, you know, they were on a roll. And, you know, bringing those songs from those previous sessions back to life, there's something about 40 years later about the way that Hackney Diamonds is operating on so many of the same levels, musically and just commercially. And let's be real, this is a band that you cannot deny the commercial element there. You talk about the ticket prices, you talk about the number of, you know, different pressings of this new record. I mean, it's ridiculous how many different collector's editions there are. There's no doubt that these guys are trying to make a buck. But with that in mind, you know, Hackney Diamonds is still a project that is authentically the Rolling Stones. And I love that they are timeless. And it might seem juvenile, it might seem immature, but I don't understand these people that are like, I want to hear the perspectives of an 80-year-old Mick Jagger. I personally don't really give a shit. Honestly, like if he wanted to really dive in and make a a highly poetic, insightful record, I'd listen to it and probably enjoy it. But part of the reason, a major part of the reason that I love the Rolling Stones, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. There's that excellent meme that's been out that shows a picture of Keith Richards next to Mitch McConnell, and it says, these are what the effects of a lifetime of sex, drugs, and rock and roll will have on you. And Keith is smiling, he's all happy. It's just how this band operates. It's what they are. They are rock and roll personified, and this album is carrying on that tradition. I don't want to compare it to records like Some Girls or Tattoo You or Emotional Rescue. I'm not saying that, because those records are freaking amazing. But as far as the energy and as far as the revival, and just keeping on. Like that's what they do. You could have argued that these guys, when Charlie passed, should have called it quits, but they bring aboard Steve Jordan, who's doing an amazing job. It's not really overthinking it. There's a couple of tracks that do feature Charlie, so it's excellent. And, you got Stevie Wonder on this thing, Elton John, Bill Wyman comes in for a track, Sir Paul McCartney. You have a Beatle playing on a Stones album. I think it's pretty damn cool. Let's get into this thing. Angry, your opening track was written for our boy Grayson. not really, but it almost feels like, why are you angry with me, Grayson? Why are you angry with Mick? I love the driving percussion and just this excellent riff. It's simple. It's not the greatest riff that Keith has ever thrown down. It's another thing that the critics keep talking about. It's like, oh, the riffs, his fingers. It's like, yeah, dude, he's 80 years old. He has arthritis. So are his fingers as nimble as they once were? No, man. But the fact that he's still making badass music working around that, it's honestly like I think of Bob Dylan and his voice throughout his entire career. It's like you work with what you got. That's it. And that's a big part of rock and roll, in my opinion. So I think that riff, the spacing that's there, is classic. It's timeless Stones. I freaking love it. Just great timing, solid groove. And then I love, catchy chorus. And I love how this thing mellows out, and it just goes for a big old coda. Really cool solo work there. And let's not forget about Ronnie Wood either. I think Ronnie Wood's guitar work on this thing, the exchange on some of these tracks between him and Keith, signature. Really nice stuff. Get Close, your second track. Drums lead in more on kind of like a pensive Sunday morning kind of feel on this track. Definitely has that kind of feel like it's leaning into balladry a little bit, but another great groove in the riff. I love the feel of the chorus. The sax breakdown is absolutely awesome. You got Elton John on a piano here, James King on the saxophone breakdown there. Phenomenal song. Depending on You is your third track. Simple riff and vocal to open. Creates an immediate feel of balladry. Kind of eased in with the second track there on Get Close. But I love the little boost on the first chorus, and then it hits. And this is the song that, talking about the late 70s and early 80s, there's some songs that kind of really take on that country vibe that the Stones rolled with there for a minute. Think of, albums like Let It Bleed. So I really dig that track. Bite My Head Off, your fourth song, bringing that just hard punk rock and energy. Paul McCartney playing bass on this song. It's hot out the gate. And this thing, it feels like Iggy Pop dropped in the studio. You're talking about all these guest appearances, but it's just hard-edged rock and roll. I love the energy from it. Whole Wide World is your fifth song. Opens with this, it's got this moody kind of 80s rock and roll riff. Made me think of Pat Benatar when this thing opened. Chorus brightens up lyrically and melodically. Really enjoyed that song though. Dreamy Skies is going to close out your A side. Got this lo-fi rhythm with prominent lead. Twangy slide in this country feel. Really love the harmonica. And talking about that exchange of riffs, this is a really solid example of that going on. Enjoyed that song for that reason. Your seventh track, Mess It Up, is going to kick off your B-side, getting a little bit of Charlie on this thing. I love that he starts off lo-fi, but then Mick enters, and then the drums, guitars all hit. Got that late 70s, early 80s Stones energy. I love the way that it really is just driving the energy of this record. Such a funky build on this track. Live by the Sword, second song with Charlie. Got Bill Wyman playing bass on. He's 86, by the way. That's crazy. Guitar and drums to open it up. Mick enters, and I love the way that Charlie comes in on this song too. It's really nice. Just timeless, man. Proving it on this song. Really a phenomenal track featuring a very classic Stones lineup. Let's talk about your ninth song, Driving Me Too Hard. Pulls back for a mid-tempo kind of country rock jam, easing off the energy there. Tell Me Straight, your 10th song, got this somber piano. It's quickly replaced by the guitar. I really like that transition there. And then when Keith and the vocals hit, the song stays pretty simple. Chorus element that feels a bit more blues driven, and it's just like kind of a dark poppy song. It's an interesting track. Your penultimate song is basically kind of like your final song in this thing, Sweet Sounds of Heaven, featuring Lady Gaga. You got Stevie Wonder on piano on this thing. Just gorgeous piano. Complementing guitar to open, drums roll in, big gospel feel that's going to carry throughout this thing. Mick's going to open, Gaga's going to come in. I really like the harmonies that they create. I really like the way that she takes the reins in the last 3 minutes, and it just turns into this big jam. And I like how it backs off. You think it's done, but then this minimal piano really just starts to slowly build back, and then you're gonna get it again. Big number. It's like 7 minutes long. And then Rolling Stone Blues, proper cover of Muddy Waters to close this thing out. I really enjoyed this record. It's certainly a vinyl please. I don't think it's going to find its way into the upper tier of the Stones catalog as far as, the quality of the songs, the impact of the music. But man, as I started this thing out, as I stated before, probably one of the funnest records of the year. And I really hope you have a fun time listening to this thing. Please like this video. Share it, subscribe to the channel, do all the things to help us blow this project up in 2023. Stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. We will see you next time on the Beat Sessions.